Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Welcome back in, everybody. I know it's been a little bit since Sap and I have done a show, and I have to take responsibility for that. Started a new job, figuring out my schedule. So now we're back, though, and we have plenty to talk about. But first and foremost, I want to say thank you for everybody in our audience for being patient, and thank you that I have such a terrific co-host in Sap, who's patiently putting up with me figuring out my schedule. So thank you, Sap.
Well, not to worry, Jet, because not much happened really for the last month and a half.
No,
And then, boom, a week ago, a lot happened. It was not a good week for the Miami Heat, to say the least.
no. Like you said, Sap, it was kind of like, all right, football season started. Basketball is going to take a major backseat for a little bit here while teams are, getting ready to report to camp. And, maybe we'll get a Damian Lillard thing here. And then, he'll probably end up just going to the Miami Heat like everybody's expected for months and months. But then came the blockbuster deal, Sap, a little less than a week ago, as Damian Lillard finally got moved, but it wasn't to a destination that anyone was expecting. It was to the Milwaukee Bucks in a 3-team deal that I'm sure everybody knows by now, but we'll recap it real quick just so you know the details. The Suns were the third team involved in that trade. Portland received Jrue Holiday, who we're going to talk about in a second, DeAndre Ayton, Milwaukee's 2029 unprotected first-round draft pick, Milwaukee's unprotected swap rights in 2028 and in 2023. The Suns got Joseph Nurkic from the Blazers, Grayson Allen from the Bucks, Nasir Little from the Blazers, and Keon Johnson as part of their trade package. And the Bucks obviously get the biggest name involved and in Damian Lillard. And it was not, again, Sap, where we thought he was going to end up. But in terms of a team that has a championship mindset and is right in the thick of competing for a title this upcoming season, it's hard to imagine Lillard ending up in a better spot for him.
Yeah, the one team no one's talking about is Phoenix. I think they did pretty well for themselves because they got rid of the contract of DeAndre Ayton. They got 4 bodies because they need bodies. They're top heavy, obviously, with Durant, Booker, and all of that talent
Beal.
they have at the top. Exactly, Bradley Beal as well. They have 3 studs, and they didn't have much else. It almost felt a little bit like the Celtics back in 2007 when they had Pierce, Allen, Garnett, and who else. But then you fill out your roster with good, solid pieces. So I think Phoenix did pretty well for themselves. Milwaukee gets the best player in the deal, so now you've got Damian Lillard going with Giannis. I think they're going to work really well together because their game should complement each other because Lillard is a guy who can score, can facilitate, is a great perimeter shooter. He'll get some opportunities because Giannis draws so much attention. They're good friends. Lillard, I believe, a year ago in a GQ article was asked, name the player in the league you'd love to play with the most. He said Giannis, and I think Giannis feels the same way about Damian Lillard. So that works out. And look, Portland's in a total rebuild. And again, the Miami Heat were shut out. And I just think that at some point, Joe Cronin, the general manager of the Portland Trailblazers, was going to trade Damian Lillard anywhere besides the Miami Heat because of the way the Heat acted, arrogant, pompous, whatever it may be. They sat idly and just assumed that Damian Lillard was going to be a member of the Miami Heat. Well, that didn't happen. So shame on them.
Yeah, Sap, I think it's actually, this deal and how it all came apart from Miami and came together from Milwaukee. It could really change the landscape of the NBA. I'm not talking about this season or for the Bucks or for the Celtics or whoever else. I think in terms of how these star trade requests are going to go, this was a massive moment in the league. You could call it a watershed moment if you want, Sap, in that pretty much every star we've seen so far who said, trade me, they pick a spot, they end up in that spot by hook or by crook. Mm-hmm. Portland wasn't willing to go along with that. And credit to Joe Cronin, Sap, who you just mentioned. I think he deserves a huge raise because this is the 2 deals, and we're going to, again, talk about the Jrue Holiday subsequent trade to the Celtics in a couple of minutes, but are just far, far superior than what people were saying. Oh, well, he'll just have to take the bag of balls that Miami throws at him. He got far, far more and set his franchise up in a far, far better position than what the Miami trade would have been, which would have been Tyler Hero, some other throw-ins, and maybe a first-round pick or 2. This is way better, and it's because he waited out the heat and waited for teams to get their ducks in a row and waited for a team like the Blazers, whose feet are to the fire with their star player in Giannis, and said, this is a deal we have to make. I think that it's rare that you have win-win-win, but we talked about the Suns. You talked about the Suns a second ago, Sap. They need bodies. The Blazers got a nice young piece in DeAndre Ayton who they can help build around with Scoot Henderson. And obviously the Bucks got that star they've been dying to pair with Giannis in Damian Lillard, who is moving on from Portland because he wants to win a championship. And this is a Bucks team that their sole goal is championship or bust. So I think all these teams did a good job in addressing what their needs for this moment in time are. But I don't think it can be overstated that this could really change how these superstar trade requests play out now, Sap.
We saw the last two off seasons in the NFL. Russell Wilson wanted to go to Denver. That's where he ended up. Aaron Rodgers wanted to go to the Jets. That's where he ended up. And now basketball, maybe it's pulling back a little bit where you just give in to the superstar player. Just remember 4 seasons ago, it was Anthony Davis, I'm going to the Lakers, and that's where he ended up. Or Paul George, I'm going to the Clippers. That's where he ended up. And then, of course, we always know that James Harden, who I know we're going to talk about a little bit later in the podcast, is someone who pretty much has picked his spots, whether it be in Brooklyn, then in Philadelphia, and Lord knows where he's going to play this season if the Philadelphia 76ers can even trade him or get some value for him. So, yeah, I think it was a watershed moment for Joe Cronin and the Portland Trailblazers to just hold on to their asset and say, we're going to just trade you to get the most back in return, because that's what Joe Cronin's job is. It's not to just appease the player. We can even talk more about football when in 2017, it was pretty evident that Bill Belichick was going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, and all we heard about in the offseason leading into 2017 is he wouldn't take 4 first-round picks from the Cleveland Browns. Well, he took a second-round pick from the 49ers. I think he was derelict in his duty, because if the Cleveland Browns had even offered 2 first-round picks, he should have taken it, because,
Yeah, of course.
because you can't say I despise that organization, which is not the same organization that he coached in. It's actually the Baltimore Ravens who moved to Baltimore, back in 1996, where they had been in Cleveland and Belichick had coached in Cleveland. The Browns have really nothing to do with Belichick, but I despise that organization. I'm not going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm going to trade him to my friend Kyle Shanahan and only get a second-round pick. You've got to get the most in return, because it is a business. It's cutthroat, and give Joe Cronin credit for that.
Yeah, Sap, and that's something that we talked about when, the Lillard trade request first propped up, is that people were saying, well, free agents are going to look at this team poorly if he doesn't, if they don't trade him to where he wants to go. Like that, obviously, free agents aren't signing in Portland regardless, and certainly not in the near future while they're rebuilding. So that was a silly argument to be made. And your sole job as the general manager of the team is to get the best possible return. And Miami's trade package wasn't good. So it made all the sense in the world for them to say, no, we're very comfortable waiting. We're comfortable with being uncomfortable. And we're comfortable taking this as far as it needs to go to maximize our return. And I don't know how anybody could possibly argue that what Miami was offering is anywhere close to what the windfall that Portland ended up getting when you combine the initial Lillard return with what they just got from the Celtics for Jrue Holiday. They got a huge haul for Damian Lillard, who is a player, Sap, who is maybe right in his prime or a little bit past it, has a huge contract and some injury concerns. The fact that they were able to recoup so much for him, Sap, when it looked a couple months ago like all they would be able to get was maybe a first and Tyler Hero, I don't think you could say enough about what a great job they did in terms of their organizational strategy.
Miami didn't have the pieces, right? Because, look, they're not going to trade Jimmy Butler. He's the centerpiece of their team. He's also roughly the same age as Damian Lillard, so they're not going to move him. Bam Adebayo was not going to get it traded, because one of the big reasons that Lillard wanted to go to Miami was because of Bam Adebayo. So those two guys were off the table. So Tyler Hero is your next best asset, and he's a really good player, but is he going to be the centerpiece of a trade for a top 15 player like Damian Lillard? No. And then they got really depleted in free agency with some of their spare parts. The guys that really stepped up in the Eastern Conference Finals are now gone through free agency. So Miami right now, which I will make this prediction now, as they stand at this moment, they will not win a playoff series in 2023, 2024. Again, they were the 8th seed last year, caught fire, beat Milwaukee, which unfortunately had a very injured Giannis. And then they were able to go on and beat Philadelphia. They beat the Knicks in the next round instead of Cleveland, because Cleveland was upset by the Knicks. And then the Celtics just sleptwalked in the Eastern Conference Finals, got it to Game 7 and laid an egg. So give Miami credit for taking advantage of Milwaukee and the Celtics underperforming in the playoffs last year. But I don't have any high hopes for the Miami Heat right now, because, again, Butler's a year older. Adebayo's a really good player. And what else do they have?
Yeah, and I think you nailed it, Sap, when you talked about organizational arrogance. And I think that they
Mhm.
just assumed, all right, we're gonna end up with Damian Lillard, no problem. It's a fait accompli. All we have to do is sit here and twiddle our thumbs. And the Blazers didn't want to play that game. And credit to the Blazers and the Miami Heat, maybe you got a wake up call. And saying, yeah,
Mhm.
like you're a big time destination, but you don't control all the cards in trades, especially. You don't control any of it. And so yes, Sap, they lost Gabe Vincent to the Lakers. They lost Max Strus to the Cavs. Those are two guys who played tremendous for them in the playoffs, especially in the Eastern Conference Finals. And so, you're left with a team that was an 8 seed last year. And yeah, they got all the way to the finals, but they've gotten worse. And the Celtics and the Bucks, their primary competition in the East, have both gotten significantly better. The Bucks just upgraded to, like you said, a top 15 player in Damian Lillard. They should have the best pick and roll game in the NBA, Sap, I would imagine, with Lillard and Giannis. You could make the case for a couple other teams with, the Nuggets with Jokic and Jamal Murray. LeBron handles the ball so much, LeBron and AD, but I mean, Giannis and Lillard is just, I mean, that's a deadly combination. And Miami is kind of left, holding their, what's in their hands. Yeah, certainly they're the biggest losers in all this, as are the Philadelphia 76ers, who have done nothing to improve themselves this offseason.
Yeah, and you're just waiting to see what happens with James Harden. I think another player in Milwaukee is going to benefit greatly from this if he's healthy, is Chris Middleton. Just think about how many open shots he's going to end up with from the weak side. They're running a pick and roll. Maybe he flashes off the elbow, or comes around a pick and gets a wide open 17, 18 footer, which Chris Middleton is a outstanding player. Now he's clearly the number 3 in Milwaukee. So when you get that pecking order of Giannis, Lillard, Middleton as your 3, that's pretty outstanding for the Milwaukee Bucks. So I think he's going to step up as well. And back to the Heat, Jet. You talk about organizational arrogance, which obviously is something that Pat Riley thrives on. And Pat Riley's another guy, just like Bill Belichick, who thinks his poop is ice cream, who thinks they invented the sport. And they always talk about do your job in New England, Heat culture, and all of that fun stuff. Well, Bill Belichick never won anything without Tom Brady or Lawrence Taylor. And last time I checked, Pat Riley, who has 9 championships as a player, as an assistant coach, as a head coach, as a general manager, well, all of those championships, he had incredible players, right? As a player, he won a championship with Will Chamberlain and Jerry West. Then, as an assistant coach and a head coach with the Lakers, Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. As a head coach in Miami, it was Shaq and Dwayne Wade. And as an executive with Miami, it was LeBron James. The players win championships
Yeah,
because, as we remember, Jerry Krause famously said for the Chicago Bulls, players don't win championships, organizations do. Well, the last time I checked, the Bulls have been irrelevant since Michael Jordan retired in 1998 until he came back with Washington. But yeah, I mean, it's about the players. And again, Riley is that arrogant guy like Belichick, who Belichick had no plan to replace Tom Brady. He moved on from Tom Brady, and his plan was Cam Newton. Now it's Mac Jones. Good luck with all of that. And we see that he's 26 and 29 since Tom Brady left town. I didn't mean to have this podcast center around Bill Belichick, but as we're talking about Pat Riley, another a-hole, I think they deserve a little pushback that it's about the players, not necessarily them.
absolutely. You could draw a lot of comparisons. To the Heat's credit, they've at least been, since LeBron left, somewhat successful, reaching the
Right.
finals twice. And the Patriots, have been in the playoffs once, and they were summarily exited by the Buffalo Bills in a rout in that wild card game. So no success whatsoever. And this season's looking like it could be the worst of all the seasons since Tom Brady left. But yeah, so the East has now a very clear hierarchy of two teams, the Bucks and the Celtics. And we just talked about what the Bucks did to improve. Damian Lillard is now, by the way, Sap, Damian Lillard, the best player he ever played with. I'd say CJ McCollum. What an upgrade in terms of best players ever played with. Now talking about Giannis, and I mean, certainly for Giannis, Lillard is also the best player that he's ever played with. So, I mean, it should be a really incredible combo to watch. And the Celtics saw that trade and said, we've got to make a counter move. They've already had a big offseason, adding Kristaps Porzingis, losing Marcus Smart and Grant Williams. And so they saw that Jrue Holiday was available after he got swung to the Blazers. The Blazers had no need of a all-star veteran a little bit past his prime. And so they swung a deal with the Portland Trailblazers, Sap, and it cost them quite a bit. Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, 2024 first-round pick via the Golden State Warriors, and a 2029 first-round pick from the Celtics headed to Portland. So 2 firsts, Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, who was the 6th man of the year in Boston last year. And they get back Jrue Holiday. Sap, mega deal for the Celtics. They struck quick. They didn't wait for, to kind of like get their ducks in a row or anything like that. They were actively blocking the 2 teams we just mentioned, the Sixers and the Heat, from acquiring him. And now the Celtics are fully committed and fully loaded up to try to win a finals team this year. And they look completely different than they did at the end of last season, Sap.
My biggest question is, if the Bucks or Celtics win the championship, does Joe Cronin get a share, of maybe gets a ring from the Bucks?
He's the one who changed the whole landscape of the NBA in the span of a couple of days.
And he's persona non grata on South Beach, to say the least, because
very much
the Celtics and Bucks are that much better. The Heat have taken a step back. And, when you look at the landscape in the Eastern Conference, you see those 2 teams. And look, they were supposed to meet in the conference finals a year ago. Milwaukee had the best record in basketball with 59 wins. The Celtics were next with 58. We all just assumed that the Celtics and Bucks were going to meet in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then the Miami Heat got in the way, beat Milwaukee in round 1. Celtics did get to the Eastern Conference Finals, but really, I know with the Game 7, but they never felt like they were in the series because they were down 3-0.
Right.
Look at what the Celtics have done in this
offseason. And Game 7 was such an embarrassment, too.
They scored 82 points. It was their lowest output of the season. Jason Tatum sprains the ankle within the first minute of the game, and Jaylen Brown was god-awful, had 8 turnovers. So you look at what the Celtics did in the offseason. They essentially traded 4 for 2, right? 4 players for 2 players. Forget the draft picks. I couldn't care less about that. By 2029, we might all be dead for all we know. But when you go 4 for 2, you traded Marcus Smart, Grant Williams, Rob Williams, and also Malcolm Brogdon.
Yep.
You get back in return Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday. If you were to rank those players 1 through 6, I would say Holiday and Porzingis are the 2 best players, certainly the highest ceiling, especially if Porzingis is healthy, and then rank the next 4 guys, former Celtics, from 3 to 6. I would probably go Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, Rob Williams, because he's just not durable, and Grant Williams. Well, you gave up 4 for 2, so now your depth is going to be tested, but you know what? You don't need all that depth in the postseason. You do need it in the regular season. So more minutes maybe for a rookie like Jordan Walsh. Peyton Pritchard, maybe he gives you 14 to 16 minutes a night. You've got Sam Hauser, again, 14 to 16 minutes a night. Same thing with Luke Cornett. So, you kind of fill in the gaps with that. Because when you look at Derek White, Jrue Holiday, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown, you've got 4 guys that are durable. So you should be able to get 65, close to 70 games from all of those players. You're going to have to watch Kristaps Porzingis, his minutes, his games, because he's been injury prone throughout his career. Heck, he's 7'3". 7'3" guys aren't generally very durable unless their name is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And then you've got Al Horford, who can't play back-to-backs. So, you're going to have to kind of fill in the gaps depth-wise, but I'm fine with that. Once you get to the postseason, you should be the team to beat, along with the Milwaukee Bucks in the Eastern Conference. And I want to ask you this, Jed. If I'm the Celtics and if I'm Joe Mazzulla, and by the way, these moves were made to appease Joe Mazzulla because now you've added 3-point shooting in Porzingis and in Jrue Holiday, who, by the way, has been a 40% 3-point shooter the last 3 years. You got rid of, I think, Joe Mazzulla's 2 biggest critics in Marcus Smart and Malcolm Brogdon. We know Mazzulla was not crazy about Grant Williams. He essentially benched him the second half of the season. Rob Williams, I think everybody loved, but he's just not durable enough. I want to see the Celtics.
Threes.
He's not a 3-point shooter without question. Yeah. I put out a tweet early in the week. In the last 5 years, Jrue Holiday's played nearly 11,000 minutes. In the same period of time, Rob Williams III has played about 4,200 minutes. So you're trading a very injury-prone guy for an incredibly durable guy and Jrue Holiday. But I want to see the starting 5 as Holiday, Derek White in the backcourt, Tatum and Brown up front with Porzingis. Go with your 5 best players. That should be your starting lineup. That should be your closing lineup. Again, you have to go game to game and see who's available, who's on rest. I would have Al Horford coming off the bench. I want to see Porzingis in the starting lineup because I think that starting 5 is the best in the NBA. And if that's your closing lineup, just think of the versatility you have, especially in the backcourt with White and also Holiday, because those guys can shoot threes. They can handle the ball, take some pressure off of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
And it's tremendous defensively. It's just a tremendous defensive backcourt.
Those 2 guys, Tatum and Brown can play outstanding defense. And from what we understand, Porzingis was the best defender against the pick and roll in the NBA. He's 7'3", can be a rim protector. Horford's a solid defender in the low post. So you're going to have a defensive team. that can also shoot threes, or in Joe Mazzulla's case, a 3-point shooting team who can also defend. So I
Right.
want to see that as the starting lineup. I don't think you can work everything around Al Horford. God bless him. He's going to be 38 come June.
Yeah, and Sap, I mean, I'm going to just get out in front of it and say I think it was a home run trade for the Celtics. You got to
Yes.
take emotions out of it. If you've listened to one of these shows, you know that Marcus Smart was my favorite Celtic. A lot of people's favorite Celtics were Marcus Smart and Rob Williams in some order. And they're both gone. But if you look at the pinned tweet, Sap, I said after the Celtics were eliminated by the Heat, they need a culture change, whether, an internal, external. They went with the internal culture change. They needed it. It cannot be understated how important it is that Jrue Holiday has won a championship before. That's massive for the Celtics. That they have somebody who knows how to get it done and has won a title before. I think that's huge for them. And they significantly upgraded in talent. And so you'll see people say, oh, well, they took a hit to their depth. I'm a little worried about that. Like, you cannot have a perfect team that has so much top heaviness and then also has great depth. There's a salary cap. You can't build, you can choose one or the other. Give me the high end talent all day, every day. That's what wins you championships. And yes, Seb, a lot of pressure on Joe Mazzulla, like you said, because they built a team in his image. And Sep, maybe they do rest some guys and give guys a little bit more rest this year because maybe they're comfortable being a lower seed because they were so god awful at defending their home court in the playoffs. They'd rather play on the road anyways.
They've had a sub 500 home record in the postseason since they swept the Brooklyn Nets a couple of years ago. I mean, they lost 3 or 4 against the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. Heck, they were 2-2 against Philadelphia in round 2. They even lost a home game last year against the Atlanta Hawks. They have not protected their home court. They seem to play better on the road. And again, you want to get into the postseason. Look, if you're the 3 seed, so be it. If Milwaukee's the 1 seed and I don't know, Philadelphia or Cleveland. I think we're forgetting
Because
Cleveland
they're
for
not a
some
young
reason.
team anymore, Sep.
No.
They're experienced team. Like there's
Yes.
Tatum and Brown are still young by age, but not young by NBA minutes. They've been around the block. So no excuses for this team. I don't think they need to be the 1 seed. I don't think they particularly care what seed they are. But they absolutely, like you said, Sep, they have guys whose minutes they need to manage. But with this type of team that has this type of experience, that's okay.
And the thing I like so much about this starting 5, if that's what they go with, look, if Horford's out there with a double big with Porzingis, that's going to be fine too. But if you have Derek White and Jrue Holiday in the backcourt, that takes a lot of pressure off of Tatum and Brown. We kept hearing that the Celtics wanted to run the offense through Jason Tatum. And how many times have we talked that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown just don't mesh well on the court? It's just fact, not opinion. Last year in 20 postseason games, they assisted to each other only 27 times. Brown assisting on a Tatum make, Tatum assisting on a Brown make, 27 times in 20 games. In the NBA Finals, the first 3 games, Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray assisted to each other 27 times in 3 games. So you see the difference on how those 2 players play together. Tatum and Brown, look, Tatum's in his 7th year, Brown's in his 8th year. They just don't mesh on the court. That's fine. Now, if you have Derek White, Jrue Holiday, running the offense, running it through them, then
less
you can
ball
set these
handling
2 guys
for
up.
Brown
Exactly,
too, right? Seth?
Especially for Brown. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Tatum and Brown being catch and shoot guys. I don't think they're great outside shooters. We're not talking like they're Klay Thompson, but maybe they can develop that part of the game. But what's wrong with them maybe cutting to the basket from the wing? Jason Tatum 6'10", Brown 6'6", incredibly athletic. Get them with some speed going. I think you're going to see that with Milwaukee now that they have Damian Lillard, less ball handling for Giannis. And Giannis is a better passer than Tatum or Brown, but miles ahead of Brown as a passer. But now when you have Damian Lillard, you can play off the ball a little bit, and that makes it even better for that player because it takes some load off of them so the usage rate isn't so high.
Absolutely. I think that, the running joke this whole offseason for the Celtics has been about Jaylen Brown's lack of a left hand. And so the less you have pressure you have to put on him, the ball handle, the better. You have 2 pure point guards in White and Holiday now that can take care of the ball handling duty. Jason Tatum's an excellent ball handler too. Brown stinks at it. And so hopefully he's improved, but they don't really need him to do it now, And as much as I like Marcus Smart, Jrue Holiday is just a better version of him. And I'm not trying to knock Marcus Smart. He's an excellent player, but Jrue Holiday is a more efficient scorer. He's a better shooter. He is more of a pure point guard. He makes better decisions. He's won a championship before. He knows his role on the team is not to be the best player. He can facilitate. He can score when you need him to. He can play that all NBA level defense. So I mean, just a huge upgrade for the Celtics in terms of him, and Porzingis is now going to be in a role where I think he's really comfortable, Sap, which is he doesn't have to be the first or even the second option. He can be the third option, the fourth option. Some days he can be the fifth option. That's perfect for a guy like him, Sap. And it also gives him less usage, so he's less likely to break down over the course of a year when he's not, required to being the guy who you're dumping the ball into him to post or the 3-point line. And he's constantly having to score for you. He's in a perfect situation for him, and they have built this team out, Sap, in a way to effectively combat Milwaukee, who they saw as their biggest competition, and that they can put that, Holiday on Lillard one-on-one and feel pretty comfortable, switch him with White, and then you have Porzingis to be able to be a rim protector on Giannis. I think that the Bucks did fantastic, and the Celtics to me did even better because they had a little bit more depth than the Bucks did in the first place. But I do not see how any other team in the East is even close to those two teams, Sap.
It's not going to be the 76ers. And look, Joel Embiid is tweeting out kind of LMAO, right? Laughed my ass off, because of what the Celtics and Milwaukee did. Philadelphia did nothing, and they still have James Harden, who didn't show up to media day. Exactly, where's his
God
head?
knows what he weighs right now, too. Like,
who knows? Yeah, he might be at the buffet for sure. So you can't give him away. Look, Joel Embiid's the reigning MVP. I mean, this might be outlandish to say. Doesn't Philadelphia at some point have to explore trading him? And the reason I'm saying that, and look, he's a franchise center, but franchise centers have been traded in the history of the NBA. I mean, Kareem was traded not because he wasn't still the best player in basketball, because he didn't want to live in Milwaukee anymore. He wanted to be traded to the Knicks or the Lakers. He's from New York. He played college basketball in LA. He wanted to be in a major market like that. Will Chamberlain was traded on several occasions. Shaq was traded. It happens. And I think that Joel Embiid right now, is he on the back nine of his career? I think he might be 30. He's also a guy who completely peters out by the end of the season, right? I mean, he's a big man and he's fantastic. But by the time you get to the playoffs, he's not the same player he is in the regular season. Maybe you look to trade him, get as much back in return, whether it be some players, some draft picks, and maybe start the process over again. The only problem is Embiid is incredibly popular in Philadelphia, and that's a great sports city. So that would be a tough one to sell to the Philadelphia 76ers fan base.
Yeah, it's just Sap, if you're looking at it, if the Celtics and the Bucks are healthy, and that's obviously going to be a massive key, but you could say that about any team. If a team has injuries to their star players, they're going to fall off. That's just how it works. But I just don't see how Philadelphia has any chance, as currently constituted, of beating one of those two teams. It would not just have to be a massive upset. The other two teams would have to completely collapse and forget how to play basketball. This is a Sixers team that even at their strongest in the past few years couldn't figure out how to get past the Boston Celtics. And this Celtics team is way, way more talented than those Celtics teams that have been knocking off the 76ers, including last year's team, Sap. And the Bucks, this is probably the best version of the Bucks we should see, including the team that won the championship, because Damian Lillard's that much better than anybody that Giannis has played with before. No disrespect to Chris Middleton, Brooke Lopez, or Jrue Holiday, but Lillard, was a top 75 all-time NBA player according to the people who picked the team. And
I don't agree with that. We talked about that. I don't think he's a top 75 player, but he is. That is a fact. I wouldn't have had him on the team. I wouldn't have had Reggie Miller on the team, but that's a discussion for another day. But yeah, no, without question. I mean, Milwaukee is going to be right there with the Celtics. Milwaukee made the coaching change, and they're going to have to defend better than they did last year. There are going to be 3-point opportunities for Damian Lillard because Giannis draws so much attention. I think Cleveland's probably the third best team in the East because
if they can get it together in the playoffs.
Yeah, I was so disappointed in them last year. I thought they could really make a run, and then they lost to the Knicks in 5 games. That was
no. We both picked them.
Series. Yeah,
I think you picked them in 5. I think I picked them in a sweep.
Yeah, I picked them to represent the conference before the season started, so I was off on that. Although they were right there, they had the 4th best record in the East, and they won 50 games. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. I did pick the Nuggets before last year to win the NBA championship at 22-1. Unfortunately, I don't gamble anymore. But I think Cleveland could be the third team because Philadelphia, that thing could implode. The Knicks overachieved last year, so we'll see what happens with that. And I think the Heat will be in that 6-7 range because they're so old and they're not deep at all. And I think they get bounced in the first round. But look, unless there's major injuries on the Celtics and Bucks, they should meet in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, and it should be a blast in those 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like you're talking about now, the fact that Holiday is on Boston, he's going to be super motivated to play against his old team. They essentially swapped him for Lillard, and he's going to, that's going to motivate him. And those two teams have been rivals for a while now. They've been neck and neck competition in the East, so it should be a lot of fun. Yeah, Sap, for the Sixers, they've sort of made their bed with James Harden, and now, like you said, they can't really give him away. He's disgruntled. He's likely out of shape. He's bashing the team to the media and in every country he visits, seemingly. I'm sure he won a lot of points in China when he, called Daryl Morey a liar because they hate him there. So maybe he plays in the Chinese league. I don't know, but yeah, it's a terrible situation in Philadelphia right now, and they didn't do anything to improve themselves. And even if they are able to trade James Harden, they're not going to be able to get back a return that would be a better player than James Harden. Even though he's still, he's past his prime, he's still an excellent player when he's engaged. So yeah, I mean, it's Boston and it's Milwaukee and then it's pick your poison in the East. I don't think any of those teams are going to come up strong. So yes, Sap, I think that's something that we're going to keep an eye on for the next year is what Philadelphia is going to do with Joel Embiid, because he's made it pretty clear, Sap, too, like his only intention is winning. And if he is not seeing that the Sixers are trying to put a great team around him, which they haven't, then I'm sure he'll ask for a trade, even if it means alienating the 76ers fan base. He knows he doesn't have a super long career ahead of him. None of those huge guys do, really.
Yeah, he'll be on the Lakers by midseason, so that'll work out real well.
He might.
But why not? I mean, the Lakers are always in for big men. I mean, like every great big man in the history of the sport somehow have played for the Lakers, right? Kareem and Wilt and Shaq, and you can just keep going on, Anthony Davis and so on and so forth. As far as James Harden, how does this sound? James Harden to Brooklyn for Ben Simmons. Like, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Yeah, they got married several times, so why not? Let's flip them again, and maybe the Philadelphia 76ers fan base will forgive Ben Simmons and James Harden go back to Brooklyn. Who the hell knows?
It's funny that Harden's like, I really want to go back to Houston. And they're like, no, we really don't want anything to do with you. And now he really wants to go to the Clippers. And the Clippers like, if they'll take nothing, we'll take him. But, he can't. Daryl Morey would be derelict in his duty to just trade him for a bag of balls. So, yeah, it's not a good time to be a 76ers fan, Sap, for sure. And their two rivals, Milwaukee and Boston, have far, far eclipsed them. And, the NBA looks so much different than it did a week ago, Sap. And I do think, too, in the Western Conference, if you're the defending champion Denver Nuggets, if you're the Golden State Warriors, if you're the LA Lakers, the teams that are looking to win in the Western Conference, too, you got to be nervous that those two teams in the East both got significantly better. And I know Golden State was a team that was interested in Jrue Holiday. Maybe they didn't want to give up some of their depth. Maybe they end up regretting that, Sap. I don't know. They have got Chris Paul in there too. It seems like they don't need another guard, but they got to have some of those young players pan out. And Denver obviously is expecting to repeat. The Lakers, I think, had before the Celtics and the Bucks had the best offseason of any team. But it does look like right now the class of the NBA are those two teams in the Eastern Conference, Sap.
It's only started.
It is, and it's exciting. Those huge trades, Sap, are so great for basketball, and I think that the fact that it was the Lillard trade didn't become just Miami offering nothing and getting him. I think that brings fans in and says, okay, well, I was expecting him to just end up Miami. This is a surprise. This is so much more interesting. And then with these trade requests come out in the future too, not just knowing where the player's going to end up. So I think really good for the league. If I'm Adam Silver, I'm very happy with how that played out because I know he was upset about these public trade declarations. And maybe Lillard isn't, the most thrilled that he's playing in cold Milwaukee instead of warm Miami. But, when him and Giannis are, racing out to one of the best records of basketball and competing for a championship, I'm sure he won't really care.
No, I think he's landed in a really, really good place.
Sap, any more stars do you think or big trades going to happen before the season starts, or do you think this is pretty much what we can expect? I know Media Day was yesterday.
I think this is it. I mean, because those were the names we talked about. Obviously, Lillard, now Harden. Whether he gets moved in training camp or if they let the season start and then they move him, that would be the next one you have to watch. But I think everybody else is pretty much all set going into the season.
Yeah, I was thinking that there was a good chance Trae Young maybe was traded this offseason, Karl Anthony Towns, maybe even Zion, but those teams all look pretty comfortable in where they are right now. So, but those are some names. If those teams get off to rough starts, that you could see make a move. I think Golden State may move one of those younger players that they have, Sap, to try to go all in for a last championship run. So you never know, but it's certainly a really exciting offseason that the NBA put together with a lot of moves at the beginning and then a lot of moves at the end of the offseason. Like I said, Media Day was yesterday, training camp preseason starting next week, and the season will start in just a couple of weeks. Pretty awesome.
Absolutely. Can't wait, as the great Bart Scott said.
Yes, he did. Can't wait. So Sap, we are going to be doing a season preview soon. Maybe this year, Sap, you can go two years in a row picking the champion. So you got to do your research, Sap. Find the best bets, and we'll do also the over and unders. That's always fun.
Absolutely.
So thanks everybody for listening. We're really glad to be back. Super excited for basketball season. Not so much enjoying football season right now for me or Sap. Sap doesn't get to see his guy Aaron Rodgers. I unfortunately get to see my team, the Patriots. So I'm really looking forward to basketball season to distract me. But thanks everybody for listening. This is the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Thanks to Full Press Coverage. Check out their website. All sorts of great content on there. You can find us wherever podcasts are found. And you can, is it still called Tweet at Us, Sap, or do you have to X you? What do you think it's called now?
Just tweet at us. We'll keep that going.
I'm never going to call it X. It's just not something that's going to happen. So tweet at us at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer. Sap sends out great poll questions all the time and different stats and tidbits. So make sure you follow there for all sorts of show info. And we will talk to you later, everybody. See ya.